I'm on the Zoom call and I don't.
You want to hear Donna?
You do.
Here, come to see it.
Maybe they're just not speaking into the thing. Okay, you ready?
Okay, welcome everyone. And I would like to call the Town Council meeting of June 6th, 2023 to order. Clerk, will you please take attendance?
Councilmember Rennie?
Here.
Councilmember Moore?
Here.
Councilmember Hudis?
Here.
Vice Mayor Badami?
Here.
Mayor Rista?
Here. Thank you. Now if we can roll our video of our meeting rules of decorum and civility. Whoops.
What is?
Or I can read them. Okay. Yeah, and for everyone's edification, we have 3 members of our clerk's office, and the member who typically does this is out tonight, so we've got a 2-legged stool.
Mayor, you could also summarize the civility rules if you wish.
Okay, tonight we'll skip the video and we'll do the rules of decorum and civility that are noted on the agenda. So to conduct the business of the community in an effective and efficient manner, please follow the meeting guidelines set forth in the town code and state law. The town does not tolerate disruptive conduct, which includes but is not limited to addressing the town council meeting without first being recognized, interrupting speakers, town council meeting, or town staff, continuing to speak after the allotted time has expired, failing to relinquish the microphone when directed to do so, repetitively addressing the same subject. Town policy does not allow speakers to cede their commenting time to another speaker. Disruption of the meeting may result in a violation of Penal Code Section 403. In summary, be nice. Okay. So next we will go to the Pledge of Allegiance, and let's see. I'm going to, is this working? Okay. All right. I'm going to call up Bella Connell, who's going to be our pledge leader. Hi, Bella. Welcome. Okay. Bella here is a 4th grader at Louise Van Meter Elementary School. She's a student council representative, and her activities and favorite subjects are reading, coding, soccer, social studies, taekwondo, and traveling. So it sounds like you're really busy doing all kinds of wonderful and interesting things. And with your student council experience, I think you're getting ready to be a new leader. So think about town council when you get older. All right, I'm going to let you lead the pledge.
Everybody please stand. Please salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, thank you. We'll take a quick photo. All right, thank you. The next part, we're going to be doing our presentations. So I'll come down here. And tonight we have the Youth Commission with us, and we'll be honoring our outgoing youth commissioners who've been serving us so well but are ready to move on. So I'd like to call them all up here. All the outgoing commissioners? Of course. All right, so I have commendations, and let me see, in no order in particular except the way they're stacked. Our first commendation, thanking you for serving the town council as a member of the Youth Commission from September 2021 until 2023, is from Megan McCurry. Our next commissioner, who has served us from September 2019 until June 2023, is Jack Neumer. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was looking. I'm like, I don't think. Okay, so he's not here. So if you're watching on Zoom, Jack, thank you and congratulations. Next commissioner is someone who served from September 2020 to 2023 and is our chair, Quincy Scott. Next, from serving from September 2020 to 2023 is Sasha Ballingham. Say it.
Balsingham.
Balsingham. All right. Thank you. And I apologize, Cameron. And finally, serving from September 2019 to 2023, we have Cameron Amami. Thank you so much. These commissioners have served on the Youth Commission for a number of years, and they are all heading off to their next adventure. They've aged out of the Youth Commission and ready to do great things in college and wherever else you go. So thank you so much. All right, thank you. And then I think all the Youth Commission, just stay up here. Let's get everybody up here because we have some awards from the Youth Commission, and I'm going to turn it over to our chair. But any Youth Commissioners here, because you're all part of this. I'll move this over here. Okay. Yeah, I mean, this is our Real Power Commission. This is where things get done. All right. And I'm going to turn the microphone over to Chair Scott.
Okay, so every year we have two awards. We have the environmentally friendly business of the year, and we also have the youth friendly business of the year. And then I know our first business isn't able to be with here tonight, but for our youth friendly business of the year, we chose Dolce Spazio in downtown, and they did come with a note for me to say that they've been working with young people since we opened for business 43 years ago, and it's a pleasure working with them and a joy to see how much they've accomplished when they return to visit years later as professionals in their field. So even though they're not here tonight, we can give a round of applause to Dolce Spazio. And then for our environmentally friendly business of the year, it is a relatively new business in town, but Ethos in downtown Los Gatos, and they're all about low waste and zero waste living. And I'm not sure if yes, we do have a representative from them.
Did you want to say a word? I know we just had your ribbon cutting recently, but I think for everybody that doesn't know about your business, say a few words.
Yeah, we're new here from Santa Cruz, California, where we started. We've been there about 4 years now, and we're very happy to be here in Los Gatos, providing low-waste alternatives and refillable products for the public and community here. So you can bring your own containers and reduce waste, filling up those personal and home cleaning products by the ounce, and keeping all of that out of the landfill.
Yeah, thanks for having us, and thanks to the Youth Commission. You all are doing great work, and yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Did you have any other words? Okay, and then I just want to highlight, this is our Youth Commission. It's our largest town commission, and you get so many things done. Your collaboration with the police department and with the town staff and with the town council. Every year, so much work gets done in this commission is brought forward to improve our community. So I think we have one of the products of your hard work this year, and I don't know who's going to introduce that. Cameron?
If we could have the presentation set up on the, perfect, thank you. So we just kind of wanted to showcase some of the events and programs that we've worked on as a commission over the years. So just to begin, this is the Youth Commission. Currently with us right now is some of our outgoing members and some of our new members. Essentially, it's just going to be a slideshow with various photos, so slide. All right, so one of our first events that we did this year in conjunction with like a local CERT team, we sent some commissioners out there just to help volunteer and give their time. In addition, we teamed up with our local police department to send some commissioners out to the local torch run, just showing our support. This is a big thing we worked on with the local police department, the social host ordinance, just kind of instating some new laws. It largely had to do with our youth, with regard to some things that were going on in our town, and really good kind of moment for the youth to voice their opinion with the police department to get some progress done. And then this is our holiday parade that we participated in. We had a float. Once again, it was raining, which was unfortunate, but we did have a nice float that we set up. Here was an Easter event that we held. We were able to bring out some of the kind of like support dogs, which are always good fun to have. This was a mental health kind of event that we held at Los Gatos High School, and then once again, we were able to make use of those support dogs. It was just around finals, so we were able to bring out those dogs just to help the students. Here was a Progna event, if Sasha, you want to speak on that?
Yeah, we did a really cool event where we wanted to create a community space for people with special needs and other kinds of disabilities to interact with other members of our community and meet some of our first responders just so they're more familiar and comfortable with them. And it turned out to be a huge success. So.
Thank you. This was our Spring into Green event. A large part of this was kind of voicing the work that we did on updating our local bike ordinance, which if you hit slide, we can speak a little bit more about. We worked in conjunction with the police department to update our bike ordinance, which it was quite old. I believe it was 70 years old or some such, and it really did need some updates, especially with the increased use of e-bikes in our town. So we're happy to work with the police department on that, and then we did get the update passed through the town council, so thank you to the town council for that. And I believe we have one more slide, which is just, I'm not sure if the YouTube link will work, but we can try. we worked with a local student to produce a video just to speak a little bit more about our updates to the e-bike ordinance. So hopefully we can play this video and showcase the work a little bit. Let's see if this works. And go full screen by chance.
I'm Officer Justin Milroy with the Los Gatos Montessorino Police Department. I'm currently assigned to the high school, middle school, and elementary schools as the school resource officer.
Sorry about the technical difficulty here. Yeah.
My name is Taj Chunawala. I am in 11th grade. I'm a student.
So just to provide a little bit of context with this video, it's essentially something that we did in production with a local high schooler who works in film, and then Officer Milroy, who worked with the commission on updating the e-bike ordinance, as well as some of our local youth commissioners.
I'm Officer Justin Milroy with the Los Gatos Montessorino Police Department. I'm currently assigned to the high school, middle school, and elementary schools as the school resource officer.
My name is Taj Chunawala. I am in 11th grade. I'm a student at Los Gatos High School, and I'm a member of the Los Gatos Youth Commission.
While on patrol, I started noticing a lot of these electric bikes, primarily the ones that are throttle controlled, and a lot of the youth have been using around town. We've been seeing things like speeding, riding the wrong way, riding with multiple passengers on bikes that aren't designed for that use, not wearing a helmet, running stop signs, riding down the middle of the street, and disobeying signals and signs, and many more things.
Over the past couple of years, the Youth Commission has been interested in a lot of projects relating to the safety and security of the youth in Los Gatos. Specifically, this year, we saw that e-bikes, being as fun as they were becoming more dangerous, especially among youth and children riding them. There were accidents that occurred in the town of Los Gatos, and we believe there were safety measures that needed to be put in place and some regulations to kind of manage that situation.
You know, a lot of these bikes aren't necessarily sold here locally. A lot of them can be purchased online. They look fun. They look like small mini bikes. They're very attractive to kids and even adults. So they're very easy to acquire. You can purchase them online, and you don't really know what it is you're getting until you get them. And even then, there's not any really training involved with that. Currently, there's 3 classifications of electric bikes. The ones that we're seeing the most of are Class 2, which is basically you can pedal the bike, or you can have an independent throttle where you don't even need to pedal the bike, almost like a mini bike itself.
It makes sense in youth development to be a little rebellious. I understand that, everyone understands that, but this ordinance is not restricting you. It's not making law enforcement want to go after you. It's just making it safer for everyone around you. The goal of this ordinance is to make it safer for the youth in Los Gatos. We're not trying to regulate all the children. We're not trying to take the fun away from these vehicles. We're just trying to make sure the youth stay safe and other drivers aren't in dangerous situations. We worked with the law enforcement, worked with town council to pass this ordinance to make it safer for those kids.
As a law enforcement officer, it sometimes is all about enforcement, but we looked at this issue and determined that this isn't all about enforcement. A lot of it has to do with education. So we started working with the Youth Commission, collaborating with them on trying to develop a solution, and we came up with kind of a multi-angled approach to this, one primarily being the education. which has led us to the creation of these educational videos. And we also worked with the town council to make some revisions to the town code on the bicycle and e-bike regulations that we have here in town. In addition to that, we wanted to get information out to the schools. The primary users of these e-bikes seem to be youth at this point, and I think a lot of the problem is that the youth and their parents just don't understand what these things are capable of and how to properly ride them and use them.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you, youth commissioners, and you may feel free to remain for the meeting, or you may feel free to, well, I don't know if you have homework, if you're graduating and what you have up this week, but if you have preparation for graduation, we will not take offense if you decide you want to do something else this evening. So thank you. All right, next on the agenda is our closed session report from our town attorney.
Thank you. This is Gabrielle Whelan, town attorney. The council met in closed session to discuss 2 items of anticipated litigation. At the end of the closed session, I mistakenly reported that both items had been continued, and actually a discussion of just one of those items has been continued, and there's no reportable action at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're going to have to close the doors as people walk out. Okay, next we have council and manager matters. So I will start. Whoops. I think people always forget when they're in the hallway that we can hear them. Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for being here. I'd like to begin tonight by recognizing that June is Pride Month. Pride recognizes the many accomplishments, the current and historical struggles, and perhaps most importantly, celebrates the LGBTQ+ community. Queer people deserve to be seen, heard, represented, and celebrated, especially in times like these when they are the subject of fierce hate and resistance. In Los Gatos, lesbian, gay, bi, trans, and queer community members have been and continue to be attacked by a small, fearful group. This hatred is unacceptable and does not represent the values of the Los Gatos that I know and love. To all the members of the LGBTQ+ community who call Los Gatos home, we stand with you and recognize your struggle, and we will not cave to fear and hatred. I'll reiterate that Pride is a time for celebration and liberation, and I look forward to participating in the many lovely Pride events happening in Los Gatos all throughout the community this month. I'll just highlight a few of the quick things that I did in the last, since our last meeting. So alongside San Jose Mayor Matt Mahan and San Jose City Council Member Pam Foley, I spoke at the Lee Stampede annual 5K and also presented awards to some of the participants. And this is always a really lovely event held at Lee High School where I attended high school. I tagged along with the mayor to a number of ribbon cuttings, so thanks for having me. And also attended a very nice Chamber of Commerce mixer at the Travel Advisors of Los Gatos, who are some of the most seasoned travel professionals that I know. A few other really great things to recognize is Big Truck Day, which was, I cannot imagine all of the work that our staff put into that, but it was amazing. There were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people there, many of whom were not from Los Gatos and many of whom were. And it was really, really cool to see and hear all of the trucks. There were a lot of horns. I attended the AWO Affordable Housing Month event, the Numu Art Now showcase with the Vice Mayor, the Los Gatos Lions Club date night. I had a lovely dinner with some residents at the terraces and attended the Informed Citizens Book Club, which anyone is welcome to join. The next that we read Golden Gates this last month, which is about housing discrimination and kind of how we got to where we are with housing today. And the next book we'll be reading is There by Tommy Orange, about the struggle of Native American folks in the Bay Area. Really informative. So thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Badami.
Thank you. On May 19th, I attended NUMU's Art Now Awards ceremony as Vice Mayor, welcoming participants and attendees from throughout the county. On May 23rd, as Council Liaison, I attended a meeting of the Community Health and Senior Services Commission. On May 24th, substituting for the mayor, I attended a meeting of the West Valley mayors and managers in Saratoga. We had a roundtable discussion focused on the housing element, needing certification from HCD, for which the City of Campbell recently achieved success. On May 24th, I attended the 20-year anniversary celebration of the Assistance League of Los Gatos, Saratoga. Their mission transforms lives and strengthens community, primarily by enhancing literacy and providing tutoring. I recognize several members from Los Gatos, not even knowing their selfless contributions, and I took tremendous pride in their humble dedication and solidarity and friendships formed. On June 1st, I attended the Live Oak Open House in celebration of the recent renovation. And later that evening, early in the evening, on June 1st, I attended the Shannon Road Community Meeting regarding proposed bicycle and pedestrian improvements that have been quite controversial to the residents, needing refinement in advance of a pending council hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Rennie.
Thank you, Mayor. On, 5/17, and I guess a couple days after it also, I attended the Cal CCA Conference of Community Electricity Providers in San Diego. It helped further grow my understanding of the electricity industry and the grid further. Interestingly, one of the sessions I attended turned out to be a game where we were broken into something like 7 teams of generators selling electricity and 7 teams of load-serving entities like Silicon Valley Clean Energy who had to buy from them, and then they gave us about an hour and a half to make deals on the different types of electricity that could be bought. And the goal of those selling, I was on one of the seller teams, was to try to make the most money selling your resources. And the goal of the load-serving entities was to meet compliance, which was have all your load covered and do it as cheaply as possible. Of course, my team won, selling the most. We knew how to get them. Continuing, on 5/20, I helped staff the Bike to Work or Wherever Days Energizer Station, which was on the Los Gatos Creek Trail. Thank you to Ed Morimoto, who organized that. It was also staffed by several members of our Complete Streets Commissioners, so thank you to them for doing that. The purpose was to encourage biking and rewarding those that did with snacks that we had from Manresa. So next time, better come to our Energizer station if you want snacks from Manresa. 5/24, Silicon Valley Clean Energy Risk Oversight Committee met. On 5/26, the Executive Committee for Silicon Valley Clean Energy met. On 5/31, I met with a representative of Summerhill who is interested in developing the lodge. On 6/1, I met with the chair of the Community Health and Senior Services Commission to touch base and see how things were going. And on 6/1, along with the mayor, the vice mayor, and Councilmember Moore, I attended the Shannon Road Community Meeting. I found it very helpful to follow the town engineer out to the actual site when discussions were going on with the residents about how their property was going to change. And that's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Hudes.
Thank you. I had 4 meetings with members of our senior community to discuss ways of implementing the senior roadmap, including the creation of a foundation to help fund some of the senior activities. I also met with, and included in that group was the chair of the Community Health and Senior Services Commission. I also met with the mayor of Monte Sereno and the city manager to discuss senior services and the potential for Monte Sereno residents participating in some of the same senior services roadmap activities. And I think there may be more to report there in the future. I met with Mark Robeson, who is a developer who's interested in developing significant development, and was able to, at his office, to understand a little bit better some of the plans and ideas that they have for a future development. And then on the 29th, on Memorial Day, I participated at the Los Gatos Memorial Park for the ceremony that was conducted there, and there were literally hundreds of people that came to that ceremony, and it was a very moving ceremony that honors our service members who died in service to their country. And let's see, Joe Simidian, our county supervisor, spoke there as well, and I know the mayor spoke and delivered a very moving message that was a sort of a broad view of the role of supporting our veterans and those who've fallen. So it was a very, very moving event. I met with the members of the staff of the Chamber of Commerce to discuss the senior services roadmap and foundation, and some other things. And it was one of my opportunities to meet with the leadership before they move on, and I was very productive and interesting meeting with them. And that's pretty much it. I did observe the Community Health and Senior Services Commission meeting as well.
Thank you. And I just want to thank my fellow council members and vice mayor who filled in for me while I was out of town visiting family for a bit. I was able to cover a bunch of meetings by Zoom, but the in-person things needed people to do it. So thank you so much. On the 19th, right before I left, I was invited to be a dignitary at the Kiwanis 43rd Annual Special Games. But what really happened was I showed up on my bike in blue jeans, and I got to watch the parade of athletes. And there were close to 1,000 special needs children there. And unlike the Special Olympics, this is not a tryout event. This is open to everybody. And there were so many games that were adapted to those in wheelchairs or with a variety of disabilities, but every one of them had an opportunity to be called out. So as the parade of athletes went around, each school was named, and then the announcer named each athlete from the school. So we stood there and watched every single athlete be announced, with their parents beaming, with them having their moment, and it was one of the most wonderful events I've ever attended. So I will be, and I then hung out and helped out with some games, and I will be attending that every year. In May, I helped with my final for the year 5th grade bike skills class. So, you know, for people with 3rd, 4th, 5th graders that are bike able, through the rec department, we offer bike skills on Wednesday early dismissals after school. They're 4 weeks long, and we're helping the students learn the safety rules and how to navigate our trails, our protected bike lanes, and our not so protected bike lanes, so these students can be our future bike commuters and help relieve traffic. On the 24th, I met with San Jose Council Member Pam Foley and staff from both Los Gatos and San Jose to talk about next steps in terms of collaborating on Blossom Hill Road from Union to Camden, where there have been a number of fatalities and there's some safety issues. So how to look at traffic calming. And that'll mostly be up to our staff, but taking those next steps is crucial. And I know for the residents, even when we talk about getting things done fast, a year or 2 years is a long time, and I can empathize, but we are really moving, and there will be some work done and a big difference made. And as mentioned by Councilmember Hudes, I was with Supervisor Simidian, and I was able to speak at the Los Gatos Memorial Park Cemetery. Incredibly touching. I met some of the scouts that are now male and female, the Boy Scouts that were called Scouts. Several of them were there on Saturday before the event to place 2,700 flags at the graves and markers of our fallen veterans. And it was really touching to talk to them. It was beautiful to go there. I know some people that are buried at that cemetery, and it was wonderful to see them honored so well and to talk to some of the family members there, because that loss resonates through the family members as well. I also met with 2 representatives from Summerhill to hear about a possible residential project at the lodge site. I've attended a number of ribbon cuttings. The yummiest was Salt and Straw at Old Town. It's an ice cream shop I discovered in Portland, so I was really excited to see them come to Los Gatos, and the founders actually flew down for that. That was followed by a ribbon cutting at Live Oak Adult Services, the reopening, which is incredibly significant for our community, for people who are taking care of a spouse or a family member and need a break, need some supervised care during the day for their loved ones so that they can come back and be the best caregiver they can be. And so this is there was a need for this, and I'm glad it's back after the pandemic. And following that, attended the Shannon Road community meeting, where I have to give a huge thank you to our staff in Parks and Public Works for doing such an incredible job, putting information together, communicating so well, setting up a meeting where the plans were laid out, where community members could walk. This is not an easy project. There is not total consensus on what people want, but I think people at least understood what some possible options are, and it's a great way to, I think, get outreach on projects moving forward in the future. On Saturday, I joined the beautification committee. We were out there weeding one of the little strips between a parking lot and Main Street. And I have to tell you, when you're out there pulling weeds, what's fun about that is people kind of walk by and they don't notice you. And then all of a sudden they say hi and they start talking, and they talk about how much they love Los Gatos, and they talk about where they live and what they're doing here. And you just get a different view of how wonderful our community is and how much people appreciate it, while you're just squatting down in the shrubbery. So if anyone wants to join us, it's the first Saturday of every month, and you get a sense of satisfaction and you meet the best people. This past Monday, I had my Mondays with the mayor and met with a couple of residents to talk about a variety of subjects, including wood smoke, electrification, education, and impact on seniors. And then finally, on Sunday, I attended the Los Gatos Music and Arts Sounds of Summer launch, and there were 3 bands there, but what was really great is it talked about what the Music and Arts Board does and the kind of music they'll be bringing forward. This will be launching Music in the Park and Jazz on the Plaza, and a variety of service groups were there as well. So it was a wonderful afternoon of just celebrating even more of the best of Los Gatos. And then finally this morning, I was able to attend and speak at the Hillbrook 8th grade promotion, and that is a beautiful event. I was able to speak there last year because our mayor was unable as well. But what will be probably memorable for these graduates for a long time is that about 40 minutes into it, it went from cold and windy to actually pouring rain. And there was not a plan B, so everybody grabbed a chair, ran to the gym, and I'm not sure what they figured out, because by that point I was done speaking, I was soaking wet, and they told me I could go. But anyway, congratulations to those students, as well as all of our high school and elementary students who are moving on to the next level. I think in the last week and the upcoming weeks, we've got a variety of graduations, so it's a good time to celebrate. Thank you. And now I'll turn to manager matters.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. I've got several things for you. Summer reading is here, so please visit our library, sign up for our reading programs. We've got a lot of great activities. Our library will be closed on Friday, June 9th for a staff workday. We are also closed at the library and town offices for Juneteenth on June 19th. Next week, you may see some goats behind the library. We're going to be doing a little bit of sustainable vegetation management. We're all very excited to welcome the goats. The Instagram post is already getting a lot of attention, so kudos to our library staff for promoting sustainable vegetation management. We are bringing back our Housing Element Advisory Board to discuss the latest letter from the state, from our Housing and Community Development Department. They are meeting at 7 o'clock on June 15th. The public is definitely welcome to join us. On behalf of Gary Colsat, it's my honor to announce that the Art Deco Society of California awarded the Los Gatos Theater an award for Art Deco preservation. And in addition, the gentleman, unfortunately, I don't have his name, who did the neon sign for the theater, also won an award, not only for the Los Gatos sign, but also his work on theaters throughout the Bay Area. Apparently, it was a very festive event, and Mr. Colsat wanted to thank the council and let you know the pride that was really on display at this symphony, so that should be a lot of fun. And then it is my honor to introduce to the council and to our community our new assistant town manager, Katie Nomura. Welcome, Katie. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hudes.
Yeah, I did have a follow-up about the housing element. Town manager mentioned that we're bringing back the Housing Element Advisory Committee, Advisory Board. What is the anticipated date for having a certified housing element and for implementing the required zoning changes that would be in that housing element?
Well, the item is not on the agenda tonight, but let me let you know very quickly, we cannot predict when the state is going to find our housing element satisfactory, so we are continuing to work with our reviewer to get there. In parallel, we are starting the rezoning and general plan amendments that are necessary to implement. And at this point, we are looking at a tentative date in July for our general plan committee to consider those general plan amendments. So we're moving forward so that way we can stay on track and meet the very strict deadline that there is for the rezoning.
Okay.
If I could just follow up, is there a date when we expect the council will be considering the housing element?
We don't have a date yet, thank you.
Okay, I guess we'll all be following the process. All right, so thank you so much, and welcome, Katie Nomura. Very exciting. I think all the council members are excited to have an opportunity to meet you, and welcome to the team, and it's great to have you here. So looking forward to this. Okay, next on our agenda are the consent items. These are items that are considered by me to be fairly straightforward, but that doesn't mean that somebody might not want to comment on them or pull an item for further discussion. So first of all, I guess, I don't even have my rack. I don't know if we have any speakers on the consent calendar. Or do we have any cards at all tonight yet? Okay. All right. I don't have any hands on Zoom. Do I have any speakers on the consent calendar? Raise your hand if you're here to speak on the consent calendar. Okay, no, the cards are for something else. We don't have any hands there. So I will turn to my council members if you have any comments or would like to pull an item or make a motion. Councilmember Hudes.
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Moore. Don't see any discussion. I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
No one opposed. The motion passes 5-0. So, thank you. Okay. And then this is 11, 12, 13. All right. Okay. Next, we will move to verbal communications. This is the portion of the meeting where people can address us on any topic for the council that is not on the agenda. And I am not seeing any hands on Zoom at the moment. Oh, I am. And I have one card in the room. So I'll do the one in the room and then I'll call on Zoom. So we have Lindley Hogan.
Just to be clear, I am Lindley Hogan. And the reason is because my oldest daughter shares the same first.
Okay, I apologize. I will read the whole name that's on the card.
Okay, thank you. Could you please reset the timer? I haven't begun. Thank you. Why don't you start when I start?
Excuse me. We'll wait until you're at the microphone and then you may start speaking. So if you start speaking on the way up, we'll start the timer. Thank you.
Okay, I am not perfect, but I sure try to make good decisions. I try to please God because you can never please everybody. He who has ears, let them hear. A book called Matthew, perhaps you've heard of it. If anyone causes one of these little ones, those who believe in me, to stumble, it would be better for them to have a large millstone hung around their neck and to be drowned in the depths of the sea. Just because you can do something does not mean you should. This is from Drag Queen Story Time, Story Hour. A woman by the name of Amanda Clark describes it as really about connecting with kids, helping them to understand identity and intersectionality. This would be fringe ideology, not education. So as far as the law is concerned, please do not consider this education because it is not. The law says, this is I think one of the most relevant laws. It's penal code, that would be criminal. 311.6. Every person who knowingly engages or participates in, manages, produces, sponsors, presents, or exhibits obscene live conduct to or before an assembly or audience consisting of at least one person or spectator in any public place or in any place exposed to public view, or in any place open to the public or to a segment thereof, whether or not an admission fee is charged or whether or not attendance is conditioned upon the presentation of a membership card or token, is guilty. I think that law will be used in a suit against this town, along with the other ones that are regarding luring children and seducing them. So I just thought that you should educate yourselves on what you're really doing. And since I have 45 seconds left, I'd like for you to know a personal story about a night when I was left all alone with a man who was hired to protect me. And that man forced me to take off my clothes. I didn't want to do it. He forced me. And then he forced me to get into the bathtub. And nobody was there to protect me. And when the people who were supposed to be there to protect me finally came in, they missed the opportunity because it was too late. I had already suffered. I was 3 years old. Okay? And you know what? Nothing happened to that boy. But I suffered, and I still suffer today from nightmares where I wake up and I see the bathroom, the toilet, the sink, the door, where no one came out to save me. And that's what you're doing to these children. And they will have nightmares every day of their life, forever. If you do this to them. And by the way, this is me at 5 years old. I was 3 years old when that happened to me over at 244 Cerro Chico off of Harding in Los Gatos. I was 3 years old. I remember everything. Those children will remember everything. You might think it's okay for you. Thank you so much for letting me talk. Please, God bless you, and please allow you to make right decisions for people who are very vulnerable. Thank you.
Thank you. We don't have any cards, so I'll call on Ron Meyer on Zoom.
I am petitioning the town council to stop the Los Gatos Library from holding a drag queen story hour that's scheduled on the library calendar for the summer events on July 27th, 2023, 10:30 to 11:30 a.m. in the middle of the day on the lawn in front of the Los Gatos Library. I, like Lindley, have an issue with drag queen story hour for impressionable, innocent, and vulnerable kids. In fact, it says on the Los Gatos Library website and in the calendar of events for the summer, join us for an interactive drag story time and celebrate reading through the glamorous art of drag. Drag has always been the purview of adults, not for little kids, preteens, and teenagers. This is a perversion. They are entitled to their perversion, and they can enjoy themselves up in the city of San Francisco at the corresponding drag clubs up there, which have always been the purview of adult entertainment. Not in my town, not in front of my library, and not will they advertise their perversions in front of the town children. I will not allow this to happen, not in my town. They are entitled to their perversion, but I have a right and entitlement to not go along or agree with their perversion, and to provide a venue such as our library lawn in the middle of July for them to engage in their perversion. I am asking the town council to stop this. I have had a conversation with Ryan Baker, the library director, and I asked him a number of questions. Who approved this? Who is sponsoring this? Who is paying for this? And he was less than transparent in answering my questions. I told him I was a citizen of Los Gatos, a member of the library, have a library card and have had one for a long time, and I would like some answers, because right now this is perversion and it's not going to happen in my town of Los Gatos.
Thank you. Okay, so that was our last speaker on Zoom, and we don't have any other cards. I don't know if we have a follow-up comment about
Yes,
anything.
thank you, Mayor. I just want to remind our community that our library offers and serves a really diverse community here in Los Gatos. We have over 250 programs that are being offered just this summer. Our staff work very hard to listen to the needs of our community, and it's our responsibility as a town to provide programming that reflects the diversity of our community. And this particular one that has been talked about tonight serves the Los Gatos community just like so many others. I would invite all community members to enjoy the many offerings that our library has and find a program that suits you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so that closes verbal communication. And now we will move on to other business. Item 11, authorizing town manager to close the Winchester Boulevard Complete Streets project, and a variety of other steps. So I will turn to Director Burnham for a report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Nicole Burnham, Director of Parks and Public Works. When we discussed capital budget concepts back in March, we talked about the idea of this Winchester Boulevard Complete Streets project, and that it had a chunk of funding sitting available and no viable delivery mechanism for the project given its project cost. I believe at that meeting we got consensus around the idea that maybe we could close that project out and identify other uses for the funds. So that project contains over $1.7 million in Measure B funding. And with Measure B funding, we can only apply that funding to other projects. that have been identified as Measure B projects. So the town has 4 of those, one of which was Winchester Boulevard Complete Streets. The other one is Los Gatos Creek Trail Connector at Highway 9. One is Kennedy Road sidewalks, and then Highway 17 bike ped overcrossing. So staff was making the recommendation that we ask that VTA reallocate the Measure B funding to Kennedy Road sidewalks, which is a project that's just starting. We're really just in the process of doing base mapping and survey and right-of-way identification. And it doesn't have any construction funding associated with it yet, or has a very limited amount. Also with the Complete Streets project, there is existing GFAR funding available, and we're asking for that to be split partly to fund Los Gatos Creek Trail Highway 9 connector, which needs just a little bit more money to get it over the goal line from the other grants that we've been able to identify, with the remaining of the balance going to Kennedy Road. So basically Winchester Boulevard, the bulk of the funding going to Kennedy Road, with a small amount diverted over to Los Gatos Creek Trail connector at Highway 9. And I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Director Burnham. So I think this is a really smart and a really good way to kind of consolidate some of these funds. I think this makes a lot of sense. The one question I had was about the Kennedy sidewalk. So this proposal fully funds one project but leaves the sidewalks a few $100,000 short. Do we have a funding plan to get that across the finish line too?
We don't yet. I think in that project's so early in its concept that I'd like to think, with this allocation, we'll have over $2 million available for it. And I'd like to think we could just try to hold it ourselves to that. So that'll be our goal as we move forward in design.
So as a follow-up, is that it grants?
It would be in the Measure B grant that we would reallocate, and then there's existing Measure B grant money allocated to Kennedy Road, a small amount, a few $100,000, less than 500, I believe. And then there is some limited GFAR, maybe 80,000 or so.
Oh, okay. So you're saying hold us to what the funding is in that pot right now?
Well, plus the Winchester project. So with these
Right.
requested actions, we would have over $2 million available for that project.
Okay. So this plan could be fully funded or close to fully funded.
I'd like to think so.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Great. Any other questions before I open it to public comment? And I just will say, originally I was going to put this on consent, but then we decided this would probably be a good item to discuss if there were questions, given the interest in our projects. So I have a card that says 11 and 12. I'm not sure if the speaker wants to speak both times or, well, I'm going to call you up to speak on, would you like to speak on item 12? Okay. So we'll hold this until 12. So we have no cards specifically for item 11. I'm looking on Zoom, and someone just disappeared, so that's the opposite of a hand raising. Nobody's raising their hand. So I'm going to close public comment on this item and return to council for further discussion or a motion. Councilmember Rennie.
I just want to make a comment on this. I was kind of looking forward to finishing the Winchester, mainly because the look there is kind of too bright, and a lot of our residents, they like the concept of the bike lane, and actually people, as one speaker earlier tonight mentioned, or was it Youth Commission? Somebody mentioned earlier tonight, walking in the bike lanes on Winchester. And a lot of people like that concept, but the look of it could be a lot more improved. And I feel that leaving it the way it is holds us back from moving other projects forward, because everybody will look at that and say, I don't want anything looking like that in my neighborhood, kind of thing. So I was really looking forward to moving us forward into something that was more tastefully done, maybe I should say. But I will agree with this, because it looks like we're a long ways from getting enough money and don't have any on the horizon for finishing this project. So it does make sense to go ahead and close it for now, but I don't want us to completely say this is closed forever. I'd like this to be a project we want to do. It's just not open, and the funds have been moved to other things so we can actually finish some things versus having many things open and nothing completed. So I do agree with the staff recommendation on this.
Thank you. I'm feeling the same way. I mean, my first thought was, the paint and plastic that was done on Winchester was step one, and the vision is absolutely beautiful. And, narrowing the lanes, having sidewalks, having mid-block crossings, all of those things. But we also know that it's exorbitantly expensive. And given the money that we have allocated for that right now, we're a long way from getting to phase 2. So, echoing Councilmember Rennie, I want to make sure that phase 2 doesn't disappear. I realize it'll be a long time, or who knows when or how we would fund that. But I also feel like you can sometimes do a quarter mile of perfect sidewalk and bike lane, or you can do 10 miles of effective sidewalk and bike lane. And right now, Winchester functionally is meeting so many more needs than it was before. But I think we should consider that still phase 1, and we can move on and get some other very necessary and well-supported projects underway. So I'm also in full agreement with this, because moving this very small, inadequate amount of money for Winchester phase 2 will get us closer to completion on 2 other projects, and that will move our town forward. Councilmember Hudes.
So I would just comment that I think the project as conceived for Winchester really needed a lot of work before it could move forward. The engineer's estimate for the project is $72 million. And it just seems as though between what was done and 72 million, there's probably something in between, but we've never seen anything to approach that. I also, if we were to take on anything on Winchester, I would want to do some real counts of people using it. I've been over the last year and a half doing my own informal count. So anytime I travel there, I count the number of riders and pedestrians. And from what I can tell, it's about 11 people per hour per mile when I am experiencing it, which is sort of at different random times. And so I would think that $72 million for 11 people over an hour is certainly exorbitant. And so I think that we should abandon the project as it's currently conceived. It does seem that the Kennedy Road sidewalks would be of value, but the question I would have is, does the Kennedy Road sidewalk project follow what we've done on Shannon Road, or is it completely independent? In other words, would we be using any of the learnings from Shannon Road as a model or archetype for that type of collector road for Kennedy, or is this something completely independent of that?
That's a question for staff.
Okay. Yes, I definitely think we've learned a number of lessons on Shannon Road, and I also think Kennedy, has a character that needs to be considered, which is part of the reason why we're taking that in a more stepwise fashion. First, just getting our base mapping in order before we even think about what concepts that we're going to present to the community.
So just not another question, but a comment is that I think we should use the Shannon Road example as a model or an archetype for how we do how we accommodate pedestrians and bicyclists on collector roads, and think about how we might take that learning and even some of the designs to other neighborhoods once we've figured out what is the right balance between the neighbor needs and the students and children who need to use that roadway. So just a comment on that.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor Badami.
With that, I'll go ahead and try a motion. So I authorize the town manager to close the Winchester Boulevard Complete Streets Project, CIP number 813-0238, and request that VTA reallocate Measure B $1,734,250 in funding. Authorize an expenditure budget transfer in an amount of $169,000 from available general fund appropriated reserve funds in project number 813-0238 to project number 832-4505, the Los Gatos Creek Trail to Highway 9 Connector Project, and authorize an expenditure budget transfer in an amount of $432,926 from available GFAR funds to project number 813-0238 to project number 813-0241, the Kennedy Sidewalk, Los Gatos Boulevard.
Councilmember Hudes?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and the only thing, well, anyway. Okay, so any other discussion? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
No one opposed. The motion passes 5-0. All right. And then we can move to item number 12, which will also be Director Burnham.
Sure. Good evening. So when this Los Gatos Creek Trail Connector Highway 9 project, we were at council in January to request authorization for bidding and moving forward into construction. And when we were here, we had a construction estimate, and with contingencies and construction phase services, total project estimate of about $5.7 million that we had presented to you at that time. That estimate was based on our engineer's estimate, based on their design development and the costs they felt like they had been seeing in the market in 2022. We succeeded in getting all the approvals we needed and went out to bid, and we opened bids in April, and much to our shock, they were much higher than we had anticipated. I think we notified council of this in a manager's memo pretty quickly right after that happened. So we've spent some time kind of assessing that and thinking about that. We've talked to our consultants about what was off in the estimate. We've talked to Caltrans about what they're seeing in costs. We have talked to VTA. We've talked to MTC. Clearly, there's no one answer. There wasn't one line item that was a total bust. It was just movement all over the numerous line items of the project cost that totaled up to a pretty significant change of over $2 million in change on the construction cost. What we really are hearing from Caltrans and from VTA is this is pretty consistent right now in transportation projects. And unfortunately, just due to inflation and a number of other factors, not having enough labor, the number of projects that are out on the street, so contractors, aren't hungry for work, so they're putting in bids that meet their needs rather than are the sharpest pencil that we'd want to see. So we spent some time evaluating the costs and determined that there's really not any value engineering to be had here. We really thought long and hard about that. How could we shave money off of the project? And we really couldn't identify anything that was going to be meaningful. I mean, finding $2 million worth of savings was a significant challenge. So we started thinking about funding strategies, and ironically, in almost the same week, I got an email from VTA saying that so part of our project funding here comes from the One Bay Area Grant Round 2 allocation. And so right around the time all this was happening, we got an email from VTA saying there was a $3 million project somewhere else in the county that had to be canceled. They needed to give back the money. And if VTA didn't allocate it to another project in Santa Clara County, it was going to go back to the federal pot. So they were wondering if anyone had projects, and conveniently we did. So it just really was a pure stroke of luck. So I raised my hand and said that we had a project available. It's shovel ready. It's ready to go. And they bit. And said, they agreed to give us an extra $2.842 million, which did a significant effort at closing our funding gap. We still had some minor, a small amount after that we needed to fund, which is why in item 11, we asked to allocate $169,000 to Winchester, or from Winchester to here of GFAR. And then we had another small pot of money with Transportation Development Act funds that was sitting out there that VTA recommended we use because we didn't have a use identified for that. So this whole item is about moving the funding around and lining up the appropriate funding for this project, should you choose to accept the recommendations that staff is making. If this recommendation is accepted, we would be back hopefully at our August 1st meeting to award construction. So, because our construction bids are still valid at present. So happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Do we have questions from council before we go to public hearing? All right. I appreciate the clear description of the funding sources and how this came about. So thank you. All right. So I have no hands on Zoom, and I've got a card for item 11 and 12 from Lee Fago.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members, and staff. Speaking tonight as a resident of the town, not representing any organization. And the reason I had listed items 11 and 12 is the link between the Los Gatos Creek Trail and Highway 9, since the funding is a shift from one project labeled 11 to this one, 12. The fact that this is going to be a $9.5 million project for access, creating basically a wide sidewalk to go off of Highway 9, Route 9 sidewalk down to the Creek Trail, to me is an obscene amount of money. A way to reduce that cost, I believe, would be to only put one routing down to the trail, not one on either side of Highway 9. All the people would have to do is walk across the street to go down one ramp instead of having two ramps. They're just probably about 50 feet apart, and to duplicate the same thing at double the cost is, I think, a misallocation of funds. There are many other projects that I think are a higher priority if we're looking for safety in our community, convenience in our community. And this one, I believe access to the Creek Trail is important. A safe access is important. But to put it on both sides of Highway 9, to me is an inappropriate use of the town's funds and the funds that we're getting from other agencies, county and statewide. Let's save that money for other projects that I'm going to talk about when we get to item number 13. And I think we can spend the money wisely to improve safety in our community. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any other cards or speakers? Okay, no. So then I will move to council for discussion, questions, or a motion. Councilmember Hudes.
Thank you. So I'm intrigued by this idea about that Mr. Fago raised. Is that something that is feasible? Is it considered? Is it as he described?
We considered it. It is a logical choice. That change would necessitate rejecting all the bids we currently have on the table, redesigning the project, redoing all the project drawings and specifications to extract that portion of the project out, paying the consultants to redo all of that money, and then rebidding the project. And since the OBAG money, we happen to be able to get it, that it seemed like spending that extra time and effort was, and there's no guarantee that in the 6 to 9 months it takes us to make those changes in the project plans, that other project costs don't escalate. So for us, it felt like we were able to close the funding gap. It wasn't necessarily worth the risk to go to the redesign.
So just as a follow-up, I'm not familiar with these kinds of projects, familiar with remodeling my house, and if I decide not to do the swimming pool, I cross it off and we don't pay for it, we don't redesign, I just wanted to make sure this, if we did only one connector, would that require a redesign?
No, that's a fair point. In the plan set, sure, we can extract, we probably could do some quick work, but all the rest of the bid documents and all of the cost components of the project are all melded together into one bid form. So we'd have to go through and redo all the quantities to separate them out. And so it means additional consultant work and time. So I think it's a combination of all of that.
And it does add value to have two paths, correct?
Oh, it absolutely does. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I'll go to Councilmember Moore, and then I have some comments.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, and so just to, as a clarifier on the two paths, I was on the Complete Streets and Transportation Commission when this was one of the projects we talked about as a commission, and we talked about this kind of two paths issue. And the idea, and correct me if I'm wrong, is Highway 9 is that particular part of Highway 9 is one of the most kind of treacherous parts of town for bicycles and pedestrians, and you can't cross the road there, right? The other path is to get up into town without having to cross that road. Is that right?
Yes. It's a much more eloquent way of saying it than I did. I went down the rabbit hole of engineering, but you went to functionality, and I apprioate that.
No, I use that trail a lot, and I think it's great. And I think part of this too is that we got what it's sounding like is we got these OBAG funds because this project is shovel ready, and so I think we should allow this project to move forward to get a great project done. And just for the public and all of our knowledge, this is costing the town in GFAR $1.1 million, much short of that 8.8 that is the total dollar amount.
Yeah, if I can weigh in, I've followed this project from the start, and the discussion of doing one side or the other has come up multiple times. And the reality is, if you pick one side, you're now telling anybody that wants to access the trail from the other side that they have to walk a block or more, cross at University Avenue, come back, and get on the trail. And in my mind, the entire point of doing this is to allow, basically full entrance and exit to this trail from both sides. And Highway 9 is not a trivial road. So asking somebody to push a stroller or take their bike or do something and cross Highway 9 out of their way is sort of like asking a driver to drive down the road, now get out of your car, walk a whole bunch of distance, get in a different car, and continue on. It kind of does not give our trail and our connection full functionality that we're wanting. And, the long-term, not even long-term, in a few years when Highway 9 and 17 get reconfigured and they have protected bike lanes and they have sidewalks, then this will be a great connection to all of it. But asking somebody to walk down a sidewalk or bike on Highway 9 to cross the street to get to the next connector is just not reasonable. And I think from the beginning, that full functionality was discussed, and that this discussion has come up every time it's been presented, and it always comes back to, this is what we're doing. We're doing it right from the start, and we have the funding. So I would be very, very unhappy about pulling that apart. That would be like ripping a functional roadway in half or doing a half entrance. So I'm fully supportive of this. Councilmember Rennie.
I'll just add a little bit to that. I think by only doing one connector, we would be adding a dangerous situation for bikers. I think walkers on sidewalk probably doesn't matter which way you're going on a sidewalk, but what's going to end up happening is somebody's going to ride their bike down the wrong way in the bike lane, which really doesn't exist there, to get on this connector against traffic. There are, and a lot of bikers do that. I'm one of those people that will ride the Alma Bridge Road shoulder between Bear Creek and Alma Bridge, right? So I know that people will do it. So we're setting ourselves up for a dangerous situation of people riding the wrong way to get to this connector. And what it actually costs us is probably going to be negligible. We've added about 165,000 of our own GFAR, which is sort of a small number. And to redo the plans, I bet we eat up all or at least half of that. So what it costs us, we're not going to come out ahead, but we're going to potentially be creating a dangerous situation. So I think we should move forward with the project as is. The other problem is construction costs always keep going up in the future. You know, if we talk about this for a year, this 8.8 will be 9.8 or 10.8 next year if we don't get our rear ends in gear here.
All right, it sounds like we're ready for a motion. Would you like to turn getting our rear ends in a motion into a motion, Councilmember Rennie?
Sure. Let me go back to. Oh, there's lots of stuff on here, huh? All right. I will make a motion to approve staff's recommendation for approving the funding plan for construction of Los Gatos Creek Trail to Highway 9 Trailhead Connector Project, CIP number 832-4505, and taking the following actions. Authorize the town manager to execute Supplement 2 to the agreement of the One Bay Area Grant, OBAG 2, grant funds for the total compensation of $6,193,000 from the Department of Transportation, Caltrans, and B, authorize revenue and expenditure budget adjustments in the amount of $2,842,000 to recognize the receipt and the spending of the additional OBAG 2 grant. Adopt a resolution authorizing the receipt of $68,884 from the Transportation Development Act Article 3, TDA 3 funding program in Attachment 3, and D, authorize revenue and expenditure budget adjustments in the amount of $68,884 to recognize the receipt and the spending of those TDA 3 funds.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Councilmember Hudes.
Yeah, I'll second it and add a comment that I want to thank staff for figuring out a creative solution to a very tough problem and for being diligent and active in obtaining funding so that we can get this done. Thank you very much for doing that. I would say that if this comes back with a request for even more money, I would be interested in looking at ways to try to shave something off or try to simplify it so that we can stick with this budget. But thank you very much.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? No. Seeing that, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
No one opposed. The motion passes 5-0. Thank you. All right, we're at 8:30, and this is a pretty beefy topic. I'm wondering if we want to bifurcate it or if we want to take council members. Would you like a 10-minute break? 5-minute break? Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break. I apologize. I just feel like this next item could go a while, and we've been here since 5, some of us. Thank you. So 5-minute break. Back from our break, I'll call the meeting back to order and turn it over to Director Ungvari for a report on item 13.
Good evening, Mayor, Council members. Gita Ungvari, Finance Director. The item in front of you, the adoption of the operating and the capital budget, which consists adopt a resolution approving the Town of Los Gatos fiscal year 2023-24 operating budget and the fiscal year 2023-24, 27-28 capital improvement program, new appropriation, additional council action on May 16, 2023, then American Rescue Plan Act budget adjustment, minor correction, and carry forward appropriation. All of those resolutions reflects the council direction from last council meeting. Also, with the budget, we adopt a resolution approving commitment of fund balances under GASB 54, as described in attachment 2 of the staff report. The resolution is including the 2 newly established and recommended fund, one of the ERAF risk and also the council priority, where we are tracking the ARPA a formal ARPA revenue that became available for the general fund. During the course after the mid-year, when we published the budget, we also identified certain revenue items. As we already showed it in the budget, as listed, and the subject line under C. Actually, it's quite a lot. It's up to 12 revenue item that we recognize, which adding up to almost $960,000. And those are just, we would like to ask Council to approve those budget adjustment in the current fiscal year so we can better match our revenues with the expenditures. And also some of the expenditure. The expenditure item as listed under C2, adding up to $467,000. I just want to call out that $435,000 of those expenditures are pass-through expenditure when we are adjusting both revenues and expenditures. And it also includes we are asking the council to decrease the OPEP trust withdrawal, which we believe that we don't need it in the year, and so we just wanted to make that budget revenue correction. Also, staff is requesting, as we are fully going to expend the ARPA funds, and we also tracking as a pass-through revenue, just do some adjustment related to that. The staff report also lists under item D, salary schedule, what staff wanted to ask the council to approve, but unfortunately our agenda software didn't pick up those items, so we cannot act on those items this time, but we will bring this one back to the council. But those salary schedules are included in the budget document. And technically, we are asking those action items from the council, and staff is here to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And before I go to questions, so I just wanted to clarify, I don't know if all the council members heard it or understood it, but because of, the staff report contains the salary schedules, but because of a glitch with the agenda, those items were not listed, and so we can discuss it tonight, but we can't vote on the salary schedules until our meeting on June 20th. So if we have questions for Director, Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for all of this. It's very thorough and complete. One thing I imagine is in here somewhere, but I wasn't able to find in reading this. Clearly, it's surplus is mentioned a few different times in here in kind of different ways. Did we end up with a surplus? And if so, what is that number?
So if you are asking whether we are ending up a surplus for fiscal year 2022-23, we anticipated that we are going to end up with a surplus, but exactly we don't know until we close the fiscal year. But when during the budget time, we anticipated around $700,000, what I believe. And if you are asking about the proposed budget, the fiscal year 2023-24 budget has a very tiny surplus, just because how the movement, what happened during the council meeting about building in the the 4.6% vacancy factors. It's created probably $30,000 surplus.
Okay, great. Thank you for that reminder. And so we'll know our official surplus sometime in fall.
Yes, when we close the fiscal year, we will report it with the when we bring the comprehensive annual financial report to the council.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions right now? Okay. Well, then I will open the public comment, and I've got one card right here. I don't have any hands raised on Zoom, so I will call on Lee Fago.
Good evening, thank you, and I promise this is the last time tonight that I'll be speaking in front of you. This is regarding the operating and capital budget. We're looking at, if you're looking at these various projects, particularly around streets and so forth, it's $47 million approximately, which is good that we're focusing on safety. This is the highest priority, and I'm very glad to see these efforts. However, we've had 3 fatalities on Blossom Hill Road over the last 3.5 years or so. And we've also had many people injured along that roadway as well. I live 2 blocks away, close to Blossom Hill School, and I hear screeching of tires, loud exhaust, and cars racing up and down Blossom Hill Road. I also travel Blossom Hill Road probably 3 to 4 times a week to visit my grandchildren, and the speeders on that road are scary as heck. And I believe that what we could be doing is a little more police enforcement of the traffic, and that we can help reduce that damage to the citizens. And also, I would ask that as you're looking at these capital improvement projects, that you include more work on Blossom Hill Road to reduce the speeding with some design work that I know our town staff is capable of doing, so that they put in things that slow down the speeders, that make that roadway safer. And I know they know how to do it. I would ask that the council direct the staff to focus on safety on Blossom Hill Road as soon as possible. And we have to do traffic calming to keep our community safe. So use the savings from the Route 9 Creek Trail, if there is savings there, and put it on Blossom Hill Road. If there's savings in other projects, put it on Blossom Hill Road so that we can make that street, that roadway safer. So thank you very much, Trushi. Appreciate it. And I promise this is it for tonight.
Thank you.
Although I will be in a room taking notes.
This item isn't agendized, but I don't know if the manager wants to talk about what's happening this summer in terms of implementing what the council's already directed on a segment of Blossom Hill Road.
Let me ask Director Burnham to bring everyone up to speed about what to expect near Blossom Hill School.
Sure. Good evening, Nicole Burnham, Director of Parks and Public Works. Starting in mid-July, there will be, as part of our paving project, lane reduction implementation and bike lane construction from Kings Court to Cherrystone. So that area of Blossom Hill is getting addressed this summer. That's a project that I think the council has seen in the past. It's finally coming to implementation through our paving program.
Could you just describe a little bit about what that does to address the speeding concern? And thank you.
Sure. So the intention of that project is to increase safety for cyclists because there's a large volume through that area. It will reduce traffic speeds by narrowing the lanes, and reducing the number of lanes. So.
Thank you. And then we also have some collaboration going forward for the other section of Blossom Hill Road. So these are underway. Thank you. Councilmember Hudes.
Thank you, and thank you to staff for following up on a number of items that were a little bit open during the motion in the last meeting. Particularly, I wanted to focus on the education ERAF which I don't know why it's called ERAF, because it doesn't seem to stand for the letters of the act, but nevertheless, I realize that you've provided some data now on what other communities are doing. And I understand that there are 3 communities that are reserving at the same rate that we are. Is that correct?
So 3 community reserving, one of them is 25%, the other is 30%, but we advised by the county by 30%. And also we listed that 2 of the community is just booking it as a special revenue, don't handling like an ongoing revenue. Since we published the staff report, we heard from San Jose. San Jose doesn't reserve it, but they note the at-risk amount at their monthly report, and they also said the reason they have enough reserve if they have to pull the money out. And some of the agency has just a smaller amount, like $500,000 or $46,000 totally. So it's not as significant if they don't receive that. So we focused more on the jurisdiction that get over $1 million in that funding source.
Thank you for providing that data, and it seems like we're adopting a conservative position on this, which I'm generally comfortable with. But I wanted to come back to the timing of when this will get resolved. My understanding is that that one lawsuit was already concluded with no clawback of the ERAF funds, and that there's another lawsuit that I think we're referring to in the staff report. What's the timing of that court case? And when would we expect to get a resolution?
So what we heard from the county, we haven't heard any definite time that it would be completed. And so when I reached out all the jurisdiction, we will be very vocal, all of the finance directors and with the county, and we are voice our opinion as we voiced a couple of times, and we will ask them just to provide as much information. But as today, they didn't provide any information definite for the lawsuit.
So what happens if it's not resolved during this fiscal year, this budget? Upcoming budget
so
year.
If it's not dissolved, the case is not solved, then we would recommend if we receive any projection for the following fiscal year, that keep the very same percentage in the reserve until the case is concluded. So we would just keep it in the reserve until it concludes, because unfortunately what we learned recently that they can go back retroactively back to 2020-21. So technically what they do, they will just take away from our property tax proceeds the amount. So our property tax will be shortfall on that year.
So while I'm going to support what the staff recommendation is on this, but I would say that if this continues on, it may make sense to bring some fresh information to the council, potentially from a legal perspective, because sometimes as these lawsuits age, they are less likely to be resolved, and this is a significant encumbrance on money that essentially has been collected by our taxpayers, but we're not able to use for their benefit. So there's a reason why I think we need to pay attention to this, particularly if it drags on beyond the budget year that we're looking at. So
yes, we will do that. Thank you.
Councilmember Rennie.
I'll add to that, because I was thinking a little bit differently. This lawsuit's been going on for a long time, and I got the feeling that it's probably not going to be resolved this year, and it might not be resolved next year, and it could go to the year after that. Then my concern is, we're reserving almost $700,000, and that's maybe not too much, but if next year at this time we're talking about adding another $700,000 to that, it starts to get to be significant numbers. So if we're going to have the money sitting there, I'd like to think about having it earn money better than our typical LAIF returns, which aren't even keeping up with inflation right now. I think we should consider, and I'm sure others may disagree with me, we put this in an IRS 115 fund towards pension, and we know that funds are fungible, and if we actually, the reason we put it in there is because we can set it up to get 6% return or something a lot more than we're getting now versus it just sitting in our money market fund kind of payments. In a 115 fund, yes, it has to go towards pensions only, but we can always pay our pension obligations out of that fund in one particular year, leaving us money available to pay, where other holes are, for example. So my point is, if this is going to go on for years and years, we need to think about getting a better return on the money that's going to be sitting there, effectively not earning much and not benefiting the town.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hudes, I was actually going to ask if you had an opinion on that, or if that would be something we'd have to study more, because
So I can say that if we put something in the trust and we have a qualifying expenditures, spending it on the pension, we can always withdraw it from the trust. So I don't necessarily see a big harm. Obviously, if we put in the fund trust and then the market goes down and we are losing all that money and we want to quickly bring it, so it's probably better to put the trust when we have a little bit more duration of time, then we can keep it there. But I definitely, so when we have our next meeting with the county, we can discuss if they have any additional timeline. And if not, then we can come back to council with discussing.
Okay, I'll go to the manager and then Councilmember Hudes.
Thank you. I just wanted to add that we are definitely going to monitor this because it's something that we take very seriously. This has been something that our finance director has been paying great attention to. In terms of a future action for either our OPEB trust or our pension trust, we'll see where we are in a few months, and then this would be a potential agenda item for the council when you sit in the capacity of the OPEB trust and pension trust oversight committee. So we will keep this in mind as we consider your future agenda items in that role. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hudes.
Yeah, I was going to ask the exact same question, but I was also thinking maybe, is this something that we could bring to the Finance Commission to get their, so I know their recommendation was different on ERAF, but now that the council has decided, or I think will decide, the specific issue about returns on that money, is that something that could be taken to the Finance Commission?
So we can definitely take it to the Finance Commission. The next agenda already set, and we don't have new information right now, but for the following one we can take, definitely. Thank you.
From my perspective, that would be fine, because really what we're talking about is something that we're going to be dealing with for a couple of years.
Thank you. Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'll just share that I have similar sentiments on the ERAF. I hadn't thought about the 115s. I think that's an interesting idea to explore. But I'm really glad to see the staff recommendation, all the information on this. I think this is really, really helpful for my understanding of kind of how other people are thinking about this. And I think, we would be devastated. We would be in a position where we'd be devastated if we spent this money, then had to make a bunch of cuts on about things we promised. So I think, if we all cross our fingers and toes, maybe in a few years, we'll have a pot of a few million dollars we can do something interesting with. But similar sentiments that the other council members have shared.
Okay. Do I have any other comments about this item, discussion? Councilmember Hudes.
So I wanted to just raise the issue about the ARPA funds. I understand that we are planning to have a meeting in August to look at that. But although I will be supporting the budget, I wanted to express my concern that the ARPA funds were not held in a unique account, and there's still lack of clarity about when and how ARPA funds have been used in the specific language that was related in the original regulation. And I believe there will probably be questions for the auditor again as to the specific reasons why it was handled differently in Los Gatos than it was in Saratoga, with a very similar amount of money and the same auditor. And so again, I'm going to sort of trust that we're going to be okay until August when we get into this, but I did want to express a concern in the way that the ARPA funds have been accounted for. I think there's a lack of clarity, and I think we can do better on that. And so, again, it's more of a comment that I'll be supporting what's in here, but I still have concerns about it, and I hope that we can get real clarity in the August session on ARPA, and that when we get to the audit, the auditor is prepared to answer questions about the specific reasons. He raised some commentary about different hurdles or different barriers, and yet was not specific about that. And I think it's really important that we understand this, because there will be other times that we receive money, and we also should have a clear accounting for how this money is spent and the intention of it being spent. I understand that the regulations loosened up, which allowed things to move quickly into the general fund, but they should have flowed through an ARPA fund to provide the kind of clarity that we needed. So again, it's more of a comment than something different that I would want to see in the budget right now, but I think it's important that we think about that.
Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. Just as sort of a follow-up on that, so just to pin down what Councilmember Hudis is talking about, will we have a pretty good idea of what remaining ARPA funds we have in August for, again, it'll be general fund money now, but the funds that were ARPA funds that are now in the general fund that we have, to potentially spend, will we have a pretty good idea of that number come August?
Yes, and I just want to say that the ARPA fund was received and expensed from the ARPA Special Revenue Fund. We have a ARPA Special Revenue Fund, and we spend it under the qualifying public safety expenditures. So we accounted it from the Special Revenue Fund. When it's expended, then it's freed up all general fund money. And I just want to so page 254 of the staff report, which is attachment 3, lists all the commitment of that $7.2 million that we are tracking, and the estimated balances at the year end 23-24, so which is approximately $779,000.
Great, that's super, super helpful. Thank you.
And for council's consideration in August, as you consider how you wish to use the remaining balance, our records show $866,000 available for future consideration for general fund purposes.
Thank you. I want to thank you for this table. I mean, it is basically very easy to follow. We can see where the money has gone, and I know that our staff has kept very careful track of it, but it's sometimes hard for us to follow the bouncing ball, and so this is a perfect place to see what we've done over the years and where everything has gone. So nice to see that. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, Councilmember Brenny.
Are we ready for a motion?
Let's find out.
I'll try a motion. We'll see how I can keep it not too long. So I will make a motion to approve staff's recommendation on the operating and capital budgets, which is A, adopt a resolution approving fiscal year 23-24 operating budget, the capital improvement program for 23-24 through 27-28, the new appropriations, and the additional council actions on May 16th of 2023, the American Rescue Plan Act budget adjustment and minor corrections and carry forward appropriations, and then B, adopt a resolution approving the commitment of the fund balances under GASB 54, and then other budget adjustments under revenue adjustments, Roman numeral 1 through 12, and then expenditure adjustments, Roman numeral 1 through 6, it looks like. And then 3, approve the ARPA, that must be, that's part of one of the adjustments, or 3, that's, 3 is approve ARPA replacement revenue tracking pass-through revenue expenditure adjustments in the amount of $453,000, and then approve the salary schedules.
The salary schedule
Can't do
we'll
that.
bring back at the next meeting because it didn't make it onto the agenda for this meeting.
Okay, so I will not include item D in my motion.
We have a motion to approve items A through C. Councilmember Hudes.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Not seeing any hands for discussion, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
No one opposed. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And now we will move to item 14. And we'll go back to Director Burnham.
Good evening, Parks and Public Works Director Nicole Burnham. This item relates to use agreements. So you saw one earlier in the consent calendar related to Red Hawks lacrosse. We have 4 use agreements with different entities in town who use our parks for various recreational activities. One of our biggest users is Los Gatos Saratoga Rec. Their agreement had expired. We did give them some amount of use forgiveness during COVID. So we're trying to revisit the use agreement and get them back into order. After meeting with Los Gatos Saratoga Rec Executive Director Nancy Roulette, we realized we were generally in agreement on most things. We recognized we need programming in the parks. But we had 2 areas where we were seeking feedback, which is what kept this off consent. One is the annual use fee, where we have a base contract amount. Los Gatos Saratoga Rec is looking for some amount of relief on that, excuse me, related to senior programming that is documented and outlined in the discussion in the council memo. And then the other element is, and I provided a table just to break down what that looks like in terms of use hours in comparison to the other park use agreements that we have in place. And the other programming, the other fee in question is a facility maintenance fee, which we charge to all users at a per person, per session cost that we use to offset the cost of maintaining the parks. All of our users so over the course of this spring, you've seen the use agreements for all of the users. This is the last one. All the users have a $4 per attendee per season or session fee, which is what we proposed for Los Gatos Saratoga Rec, and they were asking for that to be reduced to $2, which is the current fee. So it would hold the fee at the current rate. So with that, I will open it up for questions and discussion.
I had a quick question, a couple questions. I mean, the cost of maintaining our facilities goes up every year, and we've had whole discussions about, how do we get other groups to help pay for them, because, there is use on there. One question I have, and maybe you can't answer it, is do we know if Los Gatos Rec has a fee for pickleball? I mean, I don't see it called out specifically as a 55 plus program. So is there a fee for people to register? Okay.
My understanding is they do charge a fee for the classes. So at La Rinconada, there are classes Monday through Friday, and then there are certain days that are free use days. So if they charge for classes as well as for being a member of their club, and the club gets you use of La Rinconada at the times that they have reserved.
Okay, and so their request to have the fee waived relates to the free days or the classes or a percentage or what?
This relates to, so the 671 hours of programming for pickleball relates to all of the hours that they have allocated to pickleball regardless of use. So La Rinconada Tennis Court is dedicated to pickleball certain hours of each week for Los Gatos Saratoga Rec. So it's all of those hours regardless of whether it's club or classes.
Okay, thank you. And then the other question is for the $4 facility maintenance fee. At least my experience using rec in the past is you pay a usage fee. So I would think if the fee goes from $2 to $4, that can just be passed through on a registration fee.
I think that's one of the challenges that Los Gatos Saratoga Rec has expressed, that they're not passing that on to their users. Other entities are, but they are not. So it's coming out of their revenue for classes.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Moore.
So two quick questions. So one is I'm just like a newbie process question. How are these contracts written? Is this a contract that we write and then Los Gatos Saratoga? How does the kind of contract process work for something like this?
Yeah, that's a great question. We started with what we had originally from back in 2014, 2017, and updated it to current terms and standards. The contracts are pretty consistent, user group to user group, I would say.
And so we put in these suggested fee changes, and correct, all of that was just kind of your
Correct.
direct. Okay,
Correct.
Helpful, thank you. And then one point of clarification on something the mayor and Councilmember Rennie talked about. So my read of this is that pickleball is for 55 plus, and I know that our role here is not to get into the nitty gritty of telling Los Gatos Rec how to do their programming, but is that your understanding of the contract? Is that pickleball is 55 plus? It's like super a granular question, but.
I think it's a great question. I think you might have Los Gatos Saratoga Rec in the audience also. It might be a good question for them rather than me. I don't have the data on their actual users in that program.
Yeah, when we go to public comment or whatever, I'd be curious. If Los Gatos Saratoga Rec is listening, I'm curious about that part of this.
Okay, do we have any other questions before we go to public comment? Councilmember Rennie, you started to raise your hand? Okay, no. Okay, so let's go to public comment. And I have no cards, but I have a hand raised on Zoom, so I'll call on Nancy Roulette.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Town Council members, and staff. Nancy Roulette here on behalf of LGS Recreation. A quick comment that the agency and the 55 plus program are seeking support and consideration for those two fee waiver requests this evening to make the park use affordable and accessible to the community, specifically for 55 plus. I do want to affirm for Councilmember Moore that in our experience, pickleball participants are always over the age of 55. We have a mechanism as part of a system process with our enrollment and payment processing that we can affirm that, and we can provide reports on it. But anecdotally, our experience is that the times of day that it's being held and our experience is that those folks are over age 55. What you'll see is the removal of the 671 pickleball hours from the base contract amount from Director Burnham's analysis is really an immaterial amount in terms of revenue, but it goes a really long way towards supporting the strategic priorities of the town. The separate question is the maintenance fee of $2 per participant versus the $4 that the other park users are charging. We don't have a mechanism to actually charge facilities fees. We don't have a resident, non-resident fee, so we don't really have, it's a system constraint. We don't have a way to manage that other than to pass it along in a more gross fashion across all park use. But the goal here is to try to get as many community members into the park as possible and make it affordable for them.
Okay. We have a question for you, Councilmember Moore.
Thank you for clarifying on the pickleball question. I like pickleball, and I'm less than 55, but I hear you. That's part of your model. I get it. Then one clarification question on something you just said. So, what is the constraint that you're not able to charge for these programs you're talking about?
It's simply that we don't have a mechanism within our enrollment software system to specifically allocate a dollar amount towards a specific program that is used to assess a facility fee. It's a software system constraint. I'll just point out the software system we used is used by a lot of rec departments. No rec departments pay for the use of facilities, so they didn't build in that as an element in the software programming. And when we explored what it would cost to put that in place, it was prohibitive. So we would have to go through a very mechanical process of trying to assess that by program, and it would be very clunky, very cumbersome.
Okay, thank you for that answer, and thanks for staying up late with us tonight here.
Okay, I have a question for you, Ms. Roulette. I mean, I used to play open gym volleyball through the rec department, and when we walked in and signed in, we had to pay a fee. And I believe that went straight toward, it was a volunteer among us who collected the money, and it was for the use fee for the Fisher Gym. So are you saying there's not a way to be able to collect money at pickleball, or there's not a way to account for it? I mean, it seems solvable, but maybe I'm not understanding. If you could explain further.
Yeah, I think the process that we have with the school district is a little different, and it was a more informal way of processing the fees that are associated with the gym. Since that time, we've actually struck a master facilities use agreement with all of our school district partners, and we've embedded just a common set of fees across all gyms that we use in each of the communities across all school districts. So it's a little bit different arrangement than has been a past practice. We also are quite proud of the fact that we have a very small group of folks who are reconciling finance, headed up by Harrison Paste. And the process of trying to collect $4 per program per person for a unique program in a single destination is just, it's not feasible. So it is truly just a system constraint. That said, if we need to embed the fee into the total cost of the program, it's something we could explore. The approach that we've tried to take is we don't want to create obstacle or hardship for folks to get into parks and use the facilities.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? All right, well then we'll close out this speaker, and I don't see any other hands raised, so I'm going to close public comment and move to council discussion. Councilmember Hudes.
So I had a question. I'm remembering that at a previous meeting we talked about a very significant expenditure to redo the turf field, the artificial turf field. And so I'm asking, does this in any way relate to the uses that LGS Rec has on any of our facilities where there's either that specific field or others where there's a cyclical renewal of the facility that's very expensive?
Los Gatos Saratoga Rec doesn't currently directly use Creekside Sport Park, which is where we have the large expenditure need. The assets that they're using are the tennis courts, both at Blossom Hill and La Rinconada, all of which need to be resurfaced and aren't currently funded in the capital budget. And then the rest of it is grass play area, which does require its own set of maintenance that increases with the volume of use.
So do any of those have a large cyclical expenditure?
The tennis courts do, yes, we redid them 6-7 years ago, and we're looking at needing to redo them again. It's not as significant as Creekside. It's probably more in the $50,000 range, but that expense exists.
My understanding of the Creekside is that we're going to explore obtaining funding or donations from the organization that has the sports there. Is that right?
That's correct.
And so maybe going forward, if we're looking out, I don't know, 6-7 years, we may not want to build it into the contract, but we may want to build it into our discussions with LGS Rec to look at some significant fundraising when we are faced with that capital expenditures. Is that something we could explore there as well?
It is, and the executive director and I discussed that. I don't think we're ready to put it into an agreement yet, but I think we're both aware that that need exists and would be helpful.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? I mean, one of the things I wanted to bring up that I haven't in the past is, Creekside Park, that is available to our public, although in a limited way because it's used so much. But I know it predates your time here, Director Burnham, but I know that Los Gatos United Soccer League, I think, paid for a huge part of the installation of that park. And I think they are helping to pay for that. But when I think about all of the fields that we have in the tennis courts, we don't have a specific large club that is going to fund that. And if we're not maintaining it on a regular basis and collecting funds that help with that, then what do we do? And, every so many years, hit up all the groups that are using it, and if they can't afford it, we're on the hook. So I guess I'm thinking out loud, which is not helpful to other people. The question I have is, given the fees that, if we add up the annual fee use from these groups, and we look at what fee use we are or would like to be collecting for the tennis courts, does that come close to covering the cost of our cyclical upgrade at those tennis courts? I mean, this is not broken down by, well, obviously Little League lacrosse and soccer are not using our tennis courts, but
they're not using the tennis courts, but I would say that there's impact from turf field use, or grass. Let me call it grass, so we're not confusing the issues. But when we have kids soccer programs on grass fields, I mean there is an impact to the grass, and it increases the maintenance. So I think at the $4 mark, there is. I don't have a linear kind of relationship to tell you like what the annual cost of maintenance is at each of the locations, not just the tennis courts, but the grass locations as well. But I think it's not unreasonable to think, when I think about irrigation upgrades, the tennis court usage, the tennis court upgrades that need to be done, things like lighting and fencing. And, when I say $50,000 for the court reconstruction or court resurfacing, that's only the surface. It's not the ancillary facilities.
So I guess it would be, are these fees close to cost recovery or, across what we're doing, or are they, the town is paying 80% and this is covering some of it, or, I don't have a feel for what these fees are doing to help us.
I think that's a good question. I think our expectation is that they're cost recovery, generally speaking.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Hudes.
Yeah, this is just a clarification on my previous question about Creekside and turf. So I'm reading attachment 1, and it says the premises covered by the agreement are Creekside Sports Park, Blossom Hill Park, etc. So is that something that should be removed from the agreement if Creekside is not part of what they're doing?
It's currently not part of their request, but the way the agreements are written, every year we sit down with all of the users of each space and talk about what they want. And having Creekside in here reserves the right for Los Gatos Saratoga Rec to potentially use it in the future if they wanted to.
Yeah, so my concern is if we're asking one group to pay for that by raising funds and going out to their members, if LGS Rec also chose to use that facility, it would seem like if it is included in the agreement, we ought to ask them as well.
Oh, okay.
So,
Okay.
I mean,
Or it
you're
can
looking for
remove it.
feedback here rather than,
Well, yeah, and I'm looking for direction, and I think that town managers, I mean, they would all be paying the $4, but we're saying soccer would pay in addition to that $4 for capital improvements. And I think the question is it fair to ask Los Gatos Saratoga Rec to also contribute in excess of the $4? And I think I don't think that's our expectation, that with that we would not ask Los Gatos Saratoga Rec to pay more toward capital improvements, at least at Creekside.
well, I'm having a hard time here because we say we're including Creekside in the agreement, but we're saying that they're not using it. So that's maybe there's a way to clarify that.
And I think we can probably remove it from the agreement. I mean,
That's certainly one approach. I think you've got a series of decisions before you, since Los Gatos Saratoga Rec is asking for some special consideration. So I think the first question is, what's the appropriate facility maintenance fee to be charging Los Gatos Rec in comparison to the other groups? And so $4 is what's in our fee schedule. Los Gatos Rec has asked for consideration of a reduced amount. So that's one question for your consideration. The second is the question about the pickleball and whether or not you want to consider the reduced rate for pickleball compared to the other part of the agreement. And then I think the third issue that council is raising is that if our fees are not covering the replacement requirements of our assets, can we continue these conversations regarding joint fundraising or other efforts? And I think we're definitely interested in continuing those conversations. But I think the point of this agenda item is, first, what's that user fee level? And I think the staff report attempted to provide a basis of comparison so you can see how our different user groups, what has been agreed to in the other agreement. So you've got about 3 or 4 decisions ahead of you. So you might want to take them in sequence, and then in its totality, it may lead you to further exploration in terms of longer-term fundraising as we consider the bigger needs. I think our tennis courts already have a need for resurfacing. So some of these issues are here, are upon us. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, I thank you for reframing that, because I think what we're talking about are a variety of things. And right now, what we should be looking at is, should pickleball be exempt or not? And if it is, then that means that we're going to be subsidizing that. That will not be paying, money toward the use of the fees. I mean, besides the $4 per user fee, is pickleball completely exempt? I don't know if we had numbers. I mean, I'm not necessarily inclined to exempt it because it is using the court. It's taking court time and, typical wear and tear. If somebody actually wanted to waive the fee for older adults, then does somebody start carding everybody playing pickleball and say, if you're over 55, your time is free, and if you're under 55, you pay for it? Because it's not a class that is age restricted. So those are the things I'm kind of grappling with. Councilmember Hughes.
Yeah, so I'm having a little hard time finding these things in the staff report, I guess, is the concern. I see I see discussion, but I don't see those 2 specific items.
Okay, I think on page 256 of at the bottom, it says requested direction, 2 agreement items for which staff is seeking direction. And then if you go to the next page, annual use fee was 1 item, and that's on page 67, I'm sorry. Page 267 of our packet is annual use fee, and then at the very bottom of it, it leads into facility maintenance fee, and then goes on to the next page. And my understanding is those are the two main items for which we're being asked direction.
That's correct. And my hope is to also walk out of here with specific enough direction that you can authorize the town manager to execute an agreement based on that direction.
Right, and these two items are the two specific items at which there's not agreement between us and LG Rec, and we need to figure out these two items. So does everybody on the council have these two items in front of them now? Okay, Councilmember Hudes.
So maybe it would be helpful if we just took one at a time. And,
Definitely.
And then I have an opinion on each of those. So.
Yep, that is, take it sequentially. All right, so somebody have a hand raised on this item? Okay, so let's talk about the annual use fee. Councilmember Moore.
So for this fee, I think this is pretty nominal, and I think this is a, Los Gatos Saratoga Rec is a partner, but they are, like these other organizations in Table 2, they're, partners that are expected to pay for the use of the facilities. And so I think that this is the $4 maintenance fee. I think especially if that's getting us to cost recovery is appropriate, and it's $17,000, which I think is pretty reasonable.
I think we may be mixing issues. So the use fee is the annual fee that gets paid, and then the facility maintenance fee is the $4 per person.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's all right. I just wanted to make sure.
Okay, so looking at this, the use fee, if we waived it specifically for pickleball, would be a reduction of $2,254.56 a year. So that's the number we're talking about right now. So do we have any thoughts on that? Motions, suggestions? Vice Mayor?
I find it to be somewhat nominal, and I could accept pickleball as a senior program due to the nature of the sport and the age of participants. So I would support the proposed alternative language for the reduced rate in attachment 2 for that item.
Councilmember Moore.
I totally agree with the Vice Mayor. Thank you for pointing me to the right table. I was talking about, I had it right in my head. So talking about this kind of $2,000, I think that's probably something we could absorb, but I do think that we can't just always reduce all the fees whenever we get asked to. I think that this money has to come from somewhere, right? And so I if folks feel strongly about, reducing it by $2,000 to make pickleball free, I think that's fine. But I would be more in favor of keeping the structure as staff recommended it, purely kind of from a principle standpoint.
Yeah. I'm struggling with that. Councilmember Hudes.
I'm supportive of funding that amount, but I'm concerned that it's in the wrong agreement, that it should be in the other agreement with LGS Rec on senior services that they're providing. Is that wrong? We're working on another agreement, right? The 2009?
Yeah, so one way the council could tackle this is this agreement could provide for the full amount, and then the use agreement that the town is working on with LGS Rec could provide that the town will rebate them the approximately $2,000 to subsidize the pickleball usage.
And that is in the revision of the 2009 lease agreement? No.
No, what we're working on is a separate agreement for the $225,000 that the council has allocated for senior services for next fiscal year. And should you want to rebate the $2,200 associated with park use, we would then need to pull that $2,200 from the replacement general fund money, reducing the $866,000 of replacement ARPA funds, so to speak, and then add that to the agreement for senior services. So bringing their total budgetary contribution to 227. So we could certainly do that, but just recognize that we have to pull the money from somewhere, and that means we're going to be pulling it from the replacement funds that have been created through the ARPA.
I realize that I think would be creating more accounting and paperwork than we would need to, than putting it in here. I'm just making the comment that I think if it is a 55 plus service as it's being described, it really does belong there, and so I'm okay with putting it in here, but it does seem like this is the wrong place for it.
Yeah, and I would just add that, and we'll talk about this on the 20th, is that there's already a full complement of services that Los Gatos Recreation would like to provide with the 225, and I don't recall recreation activities as being part of it in this kind of pickleball sense.
Yeah, I mean, I'm having a little bit of trouble with that if this were under a so this is just straight the use agreement, and in terms of disagreeing about paying this use fee, it was called out that pickleball is primarily 55 plus, so that should be exempt. So that's not part of the agreement. That's just a one-off that occurred in terms of negotiating this fee. And I don't know, I just can't believe, well, based on the people I know who play pickleball, it's not exclusively a senior program, and I don't think it's restricted to seniors. So I'm not sure where we're at with this. Councilmember Moore.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of one of my best friends is an avid pickleball player, and he's my age. So thank you, manager, for kind of recontextualizing this again. I will not vote for anything that's going to eat further into that 886 that we're talking about. I think that this is a really nominal, increase or a nominal fee, and we've already given Los Gatos Saratoga Rec hundreds of thousands of dollars, and so I think that it's that we can expect them to pay this $2,200. So I will support staff's recommendation. I don't. It's funny we're having this conversation about such a small dollar amount, but I would support staff's recommendation. Mayor, in terms of process, do you want to do each of these in individual motions, or do you?
Yes, well, we have a motion on the table.
Oh, we do?
Correct. Or did you make a motion, Vice Mayor?
I
or
was
just say
providing comment.
Oh, okay, you're right. Sorry, my brain's getting slow. I think we should take a motion on each item. So we do not have a motion, we have a comment. Councilmember Moore.
So I'll make a motion to adopt the park use fees as recommended by town staff.
The annual use fee?
Yes.
This item is annual use fee, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion. Do we have a second? I'll second it for the sake of discussion. Okay, council members? Okay, I have no discussion. I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion passes 4-1 with Vice Mayor Badami dissenting. And then let's talk about the facility maintenance fee. That's the next item. So do we have a motion on that? Councilmember Moore.
Yeah, I have the very similar feelings, so I'll make a motion to approve staff's recommendation of the facility maintenance fee, the annual facility maintenance fee.
Okay, do I have a second? I'll second it. Any discussion? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes 5-0. I never know how to take silence. Okay, so that takes care of these two items. And so do you need anything else on this?
The town staff needs a motion to authorize the town manager to execute the use agreement with those provisions.
Okay, I'll make that motion. Second, Councilmember Moore. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
No one opposed. Motion passes 5-0. And that concludes this item, and that concludes the meeting. Meeting dismissed.